true.
I'd like to preface by saying I don't want to believe in an afterlife, so I find it very difficult to believe in ghosts. I am open to all theories, and one of them being that we were all insane. But the more time that passes, the more unsure I am about that. I see mimic stories, and it reminds me a lot of what my family experienced for about 5 years, living in a house out in the boonies. And I'm not really sure how to start this, but this is the thing that I believe lived with us. My brother drew this after he saw something, and that timestamp is from 2020, the night he sent it to me, and the night he, who's very unemotional, called me crying because he didn't think my parents would believe him, and they don't. But I'll tell you, every time I see that, I get a pit in my stomach, and I think that is what lived with us. So I'll tell the story, and we'll see how it goes. So, when I was a teenager, we moved into a house that was on the very edge of this big farmland property that had been split into different housing. We had about 1.25 acres of land, just a big grass field, the house in the center, and we were positioned on these dirt crossroads. And the house was jarringly large for the cost. And it was relatively newly built. There was only one family that had lived there before us. And there was so much activity, I don't know how to fit it into this time, so maybe I can make a part 2 if anyone's interested. But my mom had just had a baby. That's what prompted the move. And my brother, who is 2 years younger than me, we were the only kids living there, essentially. And the first day that we moved in, house was completely empty. There was no Wi-Fi or anything. My brother and I were unpacking boxes, and my parents were outside. And he and I heard laughter just echo through the house, and it sounded almost like horror movie stock laughter, like a little girl giggling, and these footsteps upstairs. And at the time, it freaked us out, but my parents wrote us off. They were very skeptical. So we went on. Summer break had just started. Again, we had a new baby. My mother was a teacher, so she had summers off, and the three of us, my brother, my mother, and I, were downstairs watching a movie, broad daylight, and we hear this thump upstairs and footsteps. So we pause the movie and we go upstairs, and upstairs there was this really horrible, ugly, dark blue carpet, just the whole expanse. We go into the nursery, and my baby brother was 7 months old. He couldn't walk. He's asleep in his crib by the door, and we immediately noticed that this crawl space thing, you know, those push-up things that you slide over, which can't be suctioned up by the AC. It has to be pushed and slid. It's open a crack, like this big. And there's the shit on the carpet, this stuff on the carpet, and we realize it's like drywall powder, and it's underneath the crawl space, and there's a trail of it to the crib. And that crawl space, you know, it was just insulation. There wasn't an attic or anything. And in Arizona, there really isn't, you know, wildlife that lives there. So my stepdad comes home and he checks it out. There's nothing up there. A few days later, the same thing happens. A few days later, the same thing happens. And it goes on for about 2 months, all while other activity is happening. Then it stops. And skipping forward a few years, 2 years later, my mother had another baby, my baby sister. Sleeps in the crib, the same crib my brother slept in. And around the same time, they were born a month apart, same thing starts happening. Right in the middle of the day, crawl space is open, and there's dust trailing to the crib. As far as that thing I showed you, there were a lot of instances. I feel like if there was something in that house, there were multiple things. My brother and I slept at the very end of this very long, dark hallway. Sunlight never came to that side of the house, and it just had an eerie feeling. You know, people would come over and comment on it, you know, friends of mine. And in solidarity, because we were so scared, my brother and I slept with our bedroom doors open and a nightlight in the hallway. And very shortly after moving in, I was sleeping in bed, and I had the blanket pulled up in horror movie fashion, and it starts slipping, so I pull it, and it starts slipping again, and I pull it, and it starts slipping again, and when I pull it, there is tension, like somebody grabbed the end of it and then let go. And a few nights later, it could have been sleep paralysis. I've never experienced that otherwise, but I was not quite yet asleep. I was falling asleep. And I hear the shuffling on the carpet. And I look down this long bedroom. My bedroom is very thin and long. And I see this woman crawling across the floor. And I didn't see her face, but I remember she had this like long, stringy hair. This black hair but it looked like she was going bald, like she had patches. And she's just crawling on all fours and disappears down by my bed. And I don't know how I fell asleep. It might have been a very vivid dream, but I was just frozen there. And again, all sorts of things happened. We're pretty sure the land itself, there was something wrong with it. But my brother and I would hear whispers in the night after everyone had gone to sleep, this woman's voice calling from the stairs. And a few times it said my name, which is 3 syllables long. So it's very difficult to mistake for, you know, another kind of noise. Another time, my brother and I were home alone, and most things happened when he and I were alone. We heard this wailing from my mother's bedroom in the dark. Just this, it started kind of like humming, and then it turned into full, like, banshee wailing through the house. And we ran out, thought about calling the police, but my parents came home and there was nothing there, so we just let it go. And then again, fast forwarding a few years, I had moved out, and apparently the activity had calmed down. My brother was older by then, and again, my parents had moved out, so he was staying in the house. His high school was just a block away. It was half a mile, so he had to walk, and he had a friend staying with him. And one night, a bunch of things start happening. So they decide to leave, and suppose they're pulling out of this long dirt driveway, and it has a full view of the house. There's chain link fence all around, and he sees something in the window, apparently very clearly. There's a lamp in a downstairs room, and there's a woman standing at the window staring at him. He says he couldn't take his eyes off her, and he felt like she was telling him that if he came back, she would get him, or something like that. But he called me immediately. I was out with friends, and we aren't super close, so it was very strange of him to call me, but he was crying on the phone. And then he drew that picture, and I felt so sick. I don't know what it is about it, but it just felt very alive and real, and like it was the thing that was there. And again, other things happened, so I can make a part 2, I guess. But yeah, might have been mold poisoning, I don't know. That's it. Since moving out of that house, I don't remember any of my dreams, but while living there, I had super vivid nightmares. There was one time my mom was telling me that she had a dream that she went downstairs to make a baby bottle in the middle of the night. And she looks over to the living room and sees my dog walking on two legs. And he stops, like she caught him. And he has human eyes. He just walks out the door. And the fucked up thing is that I had a very similar nightmare, that I was just outside that door, standing on the back porch, and my dog walks by on two legs, looking very humanoid. We kind of started looking at him sideways after that, but we haven't had any problems with him since. There was another time that I'm not sure if it was a dream. There were a lot of times when I questioned whether I was awake or dreaming, just because what was happening was so weird. But I was laying in bed, looking at the hallway, so I'm not sure if I was asleep yet. And my brother walks across the hall in front of my door, and he stops there. And the thing is, it took me a second to realize that what was standing there was my brother, who at the time was a teenager, but that version of him was 7 or 8 years old, even had the same buzz cut that he had around that age, and his eyes are glowing white, and he just stares at me. The weird thing is, the reason that I sometimes question if I was just going crazy is because that happened to me another time in public when I was, Junebug, when I was fully awake. I was at the park late at night, and there was a man sitting on a bench, and I thought he was homeless or something, I don't know. I was just walking past him, and something catches my eye. There's something glowing, and I look, and he's staring at nothing, and his eyes are glowing white. No color in them, just glowing. So that's happened to me twice, and I don't know what that is. Felt like I was going crazy, still kind of does, but nothing like that has happened since. So, sorry, the vibes are spooky just by chance right now. There was a weekend where my parents were out of town, so it was just my brother and and I was just getting off of a really late shift, so it was nighttime. And I think my brother was at a friend's all day. He got home just before me and was already upstairs. So I go into the kitchen and I hear this scratching noise. And I'm a little bitch, so I'm not investigating by myself. I go upstairs and I get him, and we go back downstairs together. And we realize the scratching is coming from the laundry room. So he goes down there and opens the door and flips on the light. My dog is in there. He's crying. And there's blood everywhere and shit. So we freak out and we take my dog to an emergency vet. We're there for a few hours and he turned out to be fine. They said it was stress-induced. He bursted blood vessels in his butthole and then, let the red tides flow. Anyway, we take him home and we stopped for food because neither of us had eaten. And we get home, go upstairs and change, and then come back down to sit on the porch and eat because inside it smelled like shit. So we're sitting there and we're talking about how weird it is that firstly the dog was inside because he basically ran the land all day. My brother didn't remember letting him in. Also, it didn't make sense that he closed himself in the laundry room. There was a 4-inch margin between the door and the machine, so he's a big guy. I don't know how the dog would have gotten behind the door and pushed it, or the door pushed inward. I don't know how it would have happened.
but I suggest somebody closed him in there. And I swear, like, right after I had said that, from where we're sitting on the porch, we see the living room light turn off. And the thing is, we had breaker problems all the time, like the whole house would lose power and we'd have to flip them. But just that light turned off. So we're thinking, someone's in the house. But also, so we had gotten in trouble for calling the cops for nothing before. And honestly, I think we both knew that the vibes, there was a specific feeling when things started happening, when activity picked up. So we still consider that somebody might be in the house. So my brother runs to the detached garage and grabs a weapon, and we go around the back of the house where we can see all the windows. And we're standing there looking up and realize that through my parents' bedroom, their door is open and the light is off in the hallway. But we had just been upstairs to change, and we left the light on, and their door, which was right in front of the stairs, we couldn't have missed it. Their door was closed. So my brother runs inside, and he's screaming, trying to intimidate somebody that might be in there. And he clears every bedroom. He checked under every bed and every closet, and there was nothing there. We saved the nursery for last, even though it's in the center of the house, just because I think we felt that there was something in there. It just always had that energy. So walking in there, I did expect somebody to be inside. And nobody was. So we went downstairs, we ate, and we cleaned the mess, and we slept on the couch for like 2 or 3 days, waiting for my parents to come home. Oh. Thing is, my parents are huge skeptics. I think my stepdad more than my mother, but they still make fun of us when we even suggest that anything was weird about that house. Um, but if they drink enough, sometimes they have stories. So once my mom told me that she had a nightmare, that there was a dark shadow in the corner of her room by the door of the nursery. She woke up crying and got the babies and put them in her bed because she felt like whatever was there was gonna get them. And my stepdad, who is a bigger skeptic, he did admit once that, and not to me, he told my mother, and my mother told me, he was sleeping one night and woke up to some like thumping by his bed, and then he heard his name called from under the bed, which is what I had been experiencing for years. And I guess he just rolled over and went back to sleep, but he had to wake up super early for work, like 4:30 in the morning. So my mom had this big, like, blackout soundproof curtain in front of the bathroom so that he wouldn't wake her when he was getting ready. And one morning she wakes up and looks at her phone because she hears whispering in the bathroom. And apparently it was like 5 in the morning. My stepdad was at work, but she thought that he was still there and that he was running late, so she gets up to talk to him. She goes to the bathroom, and behind the curtain it's dark, and she hears a low growl. And my dog, he can't climb the stairs. There's just no explanation. My baby brother once told us, so he would stand in front of the stairs as a toddler and talk up to this, like, landing we'd ask him, like, who are you talking to? And he would say, the man upstairs. One night he woke up crying, and he told my mom that the bad man was touching his feet under his blanket. There was another time that my parents and my brother were standing at the kitchen counter. I wasn't there, but they said that they saw a coffee pot slide off the counter. And obviously a lot of these things can't be explained, but I still have always kind of held on to that feeling that, maybe there's something outside of us that was fucking with us, not paranormal, I don't know, like carbon monoxide poisoning. I didn't look into it, I just, something could have been going on. But the one instance that I think gives validity to what I do know was inexplicable. I was out of the house, my brother was gone as well, and my parents were having a get-together in the backyard with some friends, and they were out there drinking with a fire, and somebody pointed up to their bedroom and asked who was up there. And everybody looks, and there's a shadow walking back and forth in the dark room. It's adult-sized, it's not my siblings, so my stepdad goes upstairs. He doesn't turn on a light or anything, he just kind of looks around, I guess, and there's nothing there, so he goes back down, and everyone is still watching this shadow just move across the window. They just kept seeing it all night, and everyone saw that one, so I guess ghosts are real sometimes. I don't know.